Hey, Brixel! So, I've been playing a lot of fighting games lately, specifically Guilty Gear Strive. It's fast, flashy, feels really good to play, has rollback netcode, and boasts one of the healthier online player bases in the fighting game community. Honestly, until Street Fighter 6 drops later this year, I don't see any other game taking Guilty Gear's spot as my primary time sink. Though, just cause me and Guilty Gear got something special going on, doesn't mean I can't take a little peek at the other fighters Arxis have cooked up recently, right? I ain't married. Now, I wasn't gonna sink my time into DNF Duel cause, I mean...
It has ceased to be. It's expired and gone to see its maker. This is a late
fighting game.
Likewise, Dragonball FighterZ isn't especially appealing because it doesn't have rollback. I'm also not going to go back and try Xrd because, well, I have a Guilty Gear game. And I love her. I love it! So that really just leaves Granblue Fantasy Rising. Now, yeah, I know it doesn't have rollback either, but A, it looks like this. B, Rising's coming out soon, and I want to get a head start playing in private lobbies. And C, Granblue is surprisingly really innovative. And D, I'm a journalist. I have a civic duty to check this game out. Now, there is a lot to say about Granblue Fantasy Rising. It's honestly a fascinating game, and my opinions on the RPG mode alone could fill an entire video by itself. But look, this video isn't actually about Granblue Fantasy Rising. Not entirely. It's a video about fighting games and their enigmatic accessibility dilemma. Cause what immediately stood out to me when I first started playing is that Granblue is a brilliant anime fighter. It boasts significantly better UX than the majority of its contemporaries and showcases a special move system that somehow manages to be approachable while still adding depth and complexity. Now, yeah, I know Granblue Fantasy Rising didn't get the warm welcome into the FGC it deserves, but releasing a fighting game without rollback netcode during a global pandemic? Yeah, no game is gonna survive that. But in my personal opinion, besides the admittedly massive rollback snafu, Granblue Fantasy Rising is a triumph, and more to the point of this video, exploring how the game handles special moves really got me thinking. How does a good fighting game walk that fine line between accessibility and depth? As discussed previously, the fighting game genre is marred with a reputation of inaccessibility, complexity, gatekeeping. Actually, if you want to get up to speed, just go check out my last video. Past Brixel does a great job covering the topic. The point being, how does a fighting game stay accessible enough to a new audience while still appeasing a notoriously impossible to please hardcore community? The short answer, with great f***ing difficulty. The long answer, well, there are a number of ways to go about approaching the problem. To name a few, autocombos, cooldowns, and simplified inputs. When implemented correctly, these features all have their place in fighting games, serving the purpose of making the genre more accessible. Dragonball FighterZ, for example, has autocombos that can make a noob feel like a badass, but at higher levels of play, autocombos become another tool in your arsenal. And yes, autocombos do have their problems, we will get to that. Cooldown mechanics like those in Rising Thunder allow for simplified gameplay, but also make players think about their special moves more like a MOBA or an Overwatch-style hero shooter. Then there's games like Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, which features simplified inputs, which allows for huge amounts of creativity in its combo system. And then there's Granblue Fantasy Rising. Granblue has all of them. Auto combos, cooldowns, and simplified inputs. However, despite my low expectations and incredible skepticism going in, yeah, the game makes it work. What I realized after only a few hours of experimentation is that Granblue Fantasy Rising isn't as oppressively simple as you might think. While yes, auto combos and simplified inputs do allow for accessibility, the game still forces a balance that keeps things competitive. But okay, I see you raising a critical hardcore fighting game pro eyebrow, and before you go getting all dismissive, just stick with me. Trust your brick. So, as mentioned before, Granblue's combat is built around a pretty interesting cooldown system. All special moves can be input by hitting the skill button along with a direction. Different versions of your special require the skill button, a direction, plus, light, medium, or heavy. These are what the game refers to as simplified inputs. Now, when you pull off your special move, it goes on cooldown, as can be seen under your health bar. Importantly though, depending on which version of the special move you're using, the cooldown length can be longer or shorter. But Brixel, I hear you cry. That's just a f***ing cooldown system. Where's all the complexity you're banging on about? Well, as I was saying before I was rudely interrupted by a make-believe argument, each special move has a secondary input style, technical inputs, which, as opposed to the simplified variant, requires classic motion inputs. So to be clear, I could hit skill with Zoe to throw out her parrot, or I could input quarter circle light attack for the same effect. But Brixel, I hear you bleeding once again. Why would I use technical inputs when I could use simplified inputs and save my thumbs the pain? And as I said before, I'm f***ing getting there. But before we get there, let's talk about this video's sponsor, ExpressVPN. Trust me, it's still on topic. ExpressVPN routes your data through any of their secure servers in 94 different countries. ExpressVPN then spits your data out on the other end, free to continue its journey to its intended destination. This detour serves to stop any wannabe internet ne'er-do-wells from stealing your personal info, or likewise snickering at your internet search history. So essentially, ExpressVPN gives you peace of mind, specifically when you're on those questionable unencrypted Wi-Fi networks, like in airports, hotels, and coffee shops. Now, we all know that ExpressVPN can be used to get access to content that may not be available in your region. But I know you don't watch TV. You're too busy grinding your way to Celestial. Who's got time to be watching the Great British Bake Off? Well, luckily, ExpressVPN comes in to deliver, because right now, I personally use ExpressVPN primarily when playing Guilty Gear. Strive servers have been throwing a little bit of a hissy fit lately, you probably noticed. But even before the crossplay update, me and my buddies in Germany had never been able to duke it out reliably. The solution? ExpressVPN. Using ExpressVPN, I can connect to a server in like, I don't know, Switzerland, and boom, like magic, we have no connection issues. You jealous? Well, click the ExpressVPN link below, and when you use my link, you'll get your first 3 months for free. If you want to support the channel, this is probably the best way to do it, so thank you so much to ExpressVPN. And with that, back to simplified and technical inputs. So, the main difference between the two input methods is that depending on which you use, there is a significant difference in the cooldown. See, I told you we'd get there. Now, I for one find this to be a brilliant solution to the motion input problem. It's all a matter of context and intentionality. Pretend you're a dev. How do you get new players to use special moves in the right context with the right intentionality when they can barely throw out a Shoryuken to begin with? Answer: let them build up to that Shoryuken over time. As an example, I confess I'm shit at half circle inputs. So when learning Baiken in Guilty Gear Strive, I admit I could only ever get her hook chain ability off in combos on rare occasions. And yeah, if I'm being perfectly honest, I still kinda struggle. Do it! Do it! Use the hook chain Baiken! Get him, going back to mating brisket. Perfect! Never mind. Now, if I was able to use the hook chain on some sort of cooldown like in Granblue Fantasy Versus, a simplified input scheme would allow a new player to pull off the move during a combo, with the downside being that they wouldn't have access to the move during the neutral game due to it still being on cooldown. In lower ranks, this trade-off at least allows players the chance to see how a move is used without the added pressure of complex motion inputs, meaning the player can build strategies and game plans around special abilities even if they can't actually pull them off just yet. The thing is that the downside of a cooldown can be vastly outweighed by the downside of not having mastered motion inputs. Naturally, only once the new player starts climbing the ranks will the disadvantages of the cooldown start to become apparent. Firstly, of course, the skill of the players they're facing will increase, and secondly, they'll start to realize how much of their gameplay could open up if they just commit to learning those technical inputs. So there is a natural, rational point at which a new player will be incentivized to move from simplified to technical inputs. At least they will if they actually want to up their own skill and stay competitive. I mean, we've all heard the analogy that getting into fighting games is like being in your own shonen anime. Learning a fighting game is about your own personal progression. Your character doesn't get any stronger, it's you that gets stronger. You're not gonna pull off a massive combo in Tekken because you got a level 70 Yoshimitsu. Nah, you're gonna pull off that combo because you're a fucking badass and you learned how to do it. And a system like this in Granblue leans into that fantasy even further, because like an anime protagonist, the only thing standing between you and cleaning the floor with your opponent's face is a technique you've yet to master. Bankai. But with that being said, this does bring us back to the topic of accessibility, because while some accessibility features ease players into more complex systems, others run the risk of becoming a crutch. The more they lean on this crutch, the harder it gets for them to stop using it. Or, to be more precise, the harder it gets for them to unlearn the crutch at higher levels of play. From my experience, no accessibility feature in fighting games exemplifies this phenomena better than the Dragonball FighterZ Autocombo system. Told you we're coming back to this. See, as opposed to the simplified input system in Granblue, DBFZ's Autocombos don't actually teach you how to do a combo. I mean, the simplified inputs don't actually teach you how to throw a fireball. All the system really does is teach you what a fireball does and when to use it. Autocombos, on the other hand, yeah, these skills are probably more transferable to, I don't know, action-adventure quick-time events, or like angrily waiting for the elevator. If a fighting game is going to implement an accessibility feature, it really needs to prop up higher level systems, or at least serve as a stepping stone to those higher level systems. Looking at Granblue's autocombos in contrast to DBFZ's, Granblue's autocombos aren't more than 3 hits long. Plus, you get dramatically diminishing returns with each hit. This, by extension, means that anyone taking any time to experiment will quickly realize that they're not to be relied on. By contrast, that's not the sense you get from DBFZ, and I think the dilemma can largely be chalked up to the fact that, I mean, this shit still looks cool, and that's kind of a problem. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, I firmly believe that doing cool shit in fighting games should be hard. And I think most players will agree with me. I mean, there's a reason no one celebrates a full parry of Chun-Li's super in more recent Street Fighter titles. What, you thought I was gonna go an entire video without mentioning Moment 37? If that full parry wasn't so damn near impossible to pull off at the time, and if the stakes weren't so ridiculously high, this moment wouldn't exist. But it does exist, and it only exists because it was difficult. Let's look at Granblue one last time. Yes, you can do some flashy stuff with simplified inputs, and yeah, you can do a 3-hit auto combo. But even a simple bread and butter combo looks vastly more impressive, and when all is said and done, there is no way around motion inputs when you want to pull off the game's more impressive moves, Sky Arts. That's obviously not an accident. So, even here in a game that prides itself on simplicity, cool shit is still hard to do. But that's it. There's a lot more we could talk about when it comes to accessibility in fighting games. From absurdly simple but surprisingly deep games like Dive Kick to the topic of disability, which really deserves its own video. Ultimately, there is a long way to go when it comes to giving fighting games their mass appeal, and an even longer way to go when it comes to universal accessibility. But I genuinely believe that games like Granblue Fantasy Rising are taking massive steps in the right direction. And this is where I pass the discussion off to you guys. What fighting games do you think handle accessibility well? What do you think about Granblue Fantasy Rising? Gonna be playing Rising later this year? Any thoughts on simplified inputs and cooldowns? Leave any and all thoughts down in the comments below. I try my best to respond to all of them. If you'd like to support the channel, we now have channel membership open. I forgot to click the button to turn on channel membership. But if that's not your thing, as always, we got our Patreon. And don't forget, we got a fight stick fund going on. My thumbs are sore. Any and all help is massively appreciated, but if you want to get something back for helping the channel, please don't forget to check out this video's sponsor, ExpressVPN. To get ExpressVPN, click the link below, and when you use my link, you'll get your first 3 months free. So thanks to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video, and thanks to our Guardian tier patrons for being my dang ride or dies, Anthony Hodgson and Liam Pullis. You guys rock. And with that, you have my permission to click onto another video. Brixa loves you very much, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.